Hello and welcome to another standard gameplay video here on the official MTG Arena channel, and today we've got a very exciting deck in store for you as we're going to try to win the game on the spot by casting Smuggler's Surprise for 6 mana, putting 2 creatures from our hand onto the battlefield, and the 2 creatures we're looking for are Terror of the Peaks, recently reprinted in the Outlaws of Thunder Junction, which deals damage to any target whenever another creature enters equal to that creature's power, and then we've got Calamity, Galloping Inferno, a 4/6 with haste, and the new saddle mechanic, which works out pretty similarly to how vehicles work, so we can tap an untapped creature to help saddle Calamity, and then when it attacks, we choose a non-legendary creature that saddled it, and create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it, has to be sacrificed end of turn, and then we get to repeat this process once, so we get to make 2 of those tokens. So let's say we use Smuggler's Surprise, putting in Terror of the Peaks and Calamity. We immediately trigger Terror of the Peaks, dealing 4 damage since we put a 4-powered creature into play. Then we saddle Calamity, attack, making 2 more copies of Terror of the Peaks, which will in turn also trigger off its own ability. So that's another 15 damage. So we're already at 19 damage before even dealing regular combat damage. And then we can potentially deal another 14 if the opponent doesn't have any blockers. So well over 20 damage to hopefully win the game on the spot. Now, of course, this does require us to have at least 6 mana and all 3 of these cards in hand, but to help us in that quest, we also have Archdruid's Charm, which is another very flexible card. Can use it early just to ramp by searching up an additional land, often gonna search up some utility land like Commercial District to at least surveil one as well, or we can maybe get our creature land, or even Cavern of Souls if we're worried about counterspells. And then once we have enough mana in play, we can also use Archdruid's Charm to search up any creature in our deck and put it in hand. So if we already have our Terror of the Peaks, we can find Calamity or vice versa, and then occasionally can also deal with artifacts or enchantments. So the versatility here is great. Now it is triple green to cast, which is why our mana base requires a lot of red-green dual lands, so we still have the double red to cast some of our board wipes, while still having triple green to cast Archdruid's Charm early. And then we also have some early mana acceleration thanks to Glimpse the Core finding additional forest, and then 1 Iron Crag as a bit more ramp. And then the Spinewood's Armadillo doesn't actually ramp, but we can discard it to gain 3 life and find a basic, so it's still a good use of our mana early on, so we don't miss any lane drops in our quest to get up to at least 6 mana. And then occasionally, if we cast our Smuggler's Surprise, and we maybe don't have exactly Terror of the Peaks and Calamity in hand, we can maybe cheat a 7/7 creature with Reach and Ward 3 onto the battlefield, which is still not a bad consolation prize. And then at 3 mana, as we mentioned, we've got some board wipes to hopefully keep up with the aggressive decks in the format, like Mono-Red Aggro and Boros Convoke. So we've got the full set of Brotherhood's End, dealing 3 to each creature and each planeswalker, can occasionally destroy artifacts instead. And then there's Into the Fire, which can either deal 2 to each creature, planeswalker, and battle, or we can put any number of cards from our hand on the bottom of our library, and then draw that many cards +1. So in matchups where we don't need the sweeper, we can just cast it to sculpt our hand, and hopefully find the missing combo pieces. And then at 4 mana, we've got the Elder Dragon War, which is very similar to Into the Fire, and we can start from any different chapter thanks to the read ahead mechanic, but we'll often start by dealing 2 damage to each creature and each opponent. Then we can discard any number of cards and then draw that many, and finally we also get to make a 4/4 dragon token. And then at 7 mana, we also have a 1-off Vaultborn Tyrant as another exciting new addition here. A 6/6 with Trample. Whenever the Tyrant or another creature with power 4 or greater enters, we get to gain 3 life and draw a card, and when it dies, it will leave behind an artifact token version that will once again trigger, providing more value. So this is also pretty nice to saddle with Calamity, as we get to draw a ton of cards and gain a lot of life, while also just making lots of attacking 6/6 Tramplers. So while not quite as lethal as the combo with Terror of the Peaks, it's not a bad backup plan. Now, of course, we don't need Smuggler's Surprise to win the game, but it does make it a lot more likely. Otherwise, we can also try to curve Terror of the Peaks on turn 5 or turn 4 with some ramp into Calamity on the following turn, but then we do give our opponent a full turn to interact with our Terror of the Peaks, potentially even at sorcery speed, whereas if we cast Smuggler's Surprise, our opponent may not see it coming, and they may not have any mana untapped to interact. If we do suspect our opponent is maybe holding some instant speed removal to take out Terror or Calamity in response to us putting them in play, then we can simply wait. If we pay an extra mana, creatures we control with power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, so if we just have the patience to wait another turn, we can maybe hit that extra land drop and still go for the combo and now not have to worry about any interaction. And then occasionally we can also cast Smuggler's Surprise early in the game if we maybe happen to draw multiple copies, just to mill 4 cards and then put up to 2 creature and or land cards from among them in hand, so that can also help hit our land drops and maybe set up our hand for the second Smuggler's Surprise. And of course, the more mana we have, the better, as we can mix and match and maybe choose all 3 modes if we have the mana for it. And yeah, that pretty much sums up our deck. Our mana base, as we said, needs lots of red-green dual lands. The Commercial District I find to be one of the more important ones, since we often find it with Archdruid's Charm, and we don't mind playing a tap land on turn 1 to kind of sculpt our hand a little bit. Then a Copperline Gorge can sometimes hurt us if we draw it later, but still important mana fixing. And then we've got some more dual lands that will usually enter untapped, as well as 1 creature land on the off chance that we needed to maybe pressure some planeswalkers or deal the last points of damage. And then, as we said, Cavern of Souls can also be searched up to maybe name Dragon, or we can name Horse or Mount to make some of our top-end creatures uncounterable, can also come in handy. And then we need plenty of forests, since we also need to search them up with Glimpse the Core and or Spine with Armadillo, and then at least 2 mountains I think is fair. And then Boseiju can give us a tiny bit more interaction, blowing up artifacts or non-basic lands. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump in some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, and sure, I'll keep this. Start with Commercial District, turn to Glimpse for a bit of ramp. We've got a sweeper if we're up against aggro. If not, we can keep ramping with Archdruid's Charm and just cast a Tyrant. So we may not go for the combo with this game. And then Calamity might be worth keeping. Pretty good with the Tyrant as well. And we are up against what could be Boros Convoke, although, yeah, Demonic Ruckus may be more of an aura deck. Also a powerful new addition. Excited to see what this card can do in other formats alongside the likes of Light Paws and maybe SRAM. Okay, can play a tapped land here. Keep up Archdruid's Charm, which could get Terror off the Peaks, and then just curve Terror into Calamity. Opponent clearly an enchantment deck. And yeah, conveniently, Archdruid's Charm can also destroy enchantments. So if they cast the Ruckus, I would probably have to take out Calyx. Now we can just ramp and cast Brotherhood's End to deal with Calyx, so it doesn't get out of hand. And then we'll have an extra land to maybe cast a Tyrant on the following turn. Might be okay, although if our opponent's playing kind of an aura strategy with enchantments, they might have Ossification, although that does require a lot of basic lands, which they may not have. And of course, if they exile the Tyrant, we would be pretty sad. Either way, I think we keep on ramping here. And I can get another Commercial District to get a Surveil. And Smuggler's Surprise, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good one. So I can cast it now, put in Calamity, Voltborn Tyrants, and then essentially copy the Tyrants, draw a bunch of cards, and do a lot of damage. That's certainly tempting. Could also kind of play it safe and still Brotherhood's End Calyx first, and then next turn go for it. On the off chance that Calyx kind of removes multiple creatures with the ability. This might be a little too cautious, but given what we've seen from the opponent, I don't expect them to deal 20 here. And maybe this is a little safer. Alright, opponent just has a backup Calyx. In that case, I'll just have to go for it. Although there's a chance we top deck our dragon and just to win on the spot. So Calyx now a 5/5. Another Brotherhood's End won't do it anymore. So Calamity plus Tyrant. Immediately draw 2. Saddle up. And attack. And get 2 more Tyrants. That's a lot of triggers. Now sadly the Tyrant is not going to leave behind an artifact version of itself, because it specifically says if it's not a token, Otherwise we would get even more Vaultborn Tyrants end of turn, which would be a little too strong. But we're still in pretty decent shape here. Opponent plays another aura, but decides that they're too far behind. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a promising hand. Can maybe use Charm to get Terror of the Peaks, never mind, we just draw it naturally. Well, if we're up against aggro, we do need to survive until we can pull off our combo, so Into the Fire seems like a good card to keep. Although I also need to find a third green source for Archer's Charm so we can use it to ramp, which will also speed up the process. Opponent on what looks like an artifact deck here with handling. Okay, so can also use Into the Fire to discard and draw a bunch. And it also can exile artifacts, so it could help us take out a synthesizer if we draw a green source. Although we may be still better off just ramping here. Alright, did not hit the land we needed, so in that case we'll Into the Fire. And then what don't we like? All my cards are pretty decent. A Vaultborn Tyrant also combo with Calamity. Although maybe we just go for the kill using Terror of the Peaks instead. And then one Charm and a Tyrant can go. And then hope to hit a couple land drops. Alright, that works. So next turn we can Charm, get a land, and then turn after set up our surprise. Could still Charm the synthesizer, but opponent may have some counter spells at the ready. They're going to use vaults. So look at the top X cards, where X is a number of artifacts they control. So now if I Charm the synthesizer, they wouldn't get to look at any. Alright, that's pretty tempting. And then next turn I can just cast Terror of the Peaks if we don't have anything else going on. Alright, I see. Skitter Beam Battalion. That's a powerful combo with the new synthesizer, since they would have been able to make 3 tokens essentially, because each one of these counts as mana value 3 or greater. Turns out we have the sweepers here to deal with the board. So let's Brotherhood's End. And then Into the Fire can maybe still discard and draw if we don't hit our 6th land. It's gonna be an Iron Crag. Yeah, I guess we'll just play Iron Crag. And then I don't really want to get rid of anything with Into the Fire. Although I could use it, get rid of a Terror of the Peaks, and then maybe hit a land drop in case they can answer the Iron Crag. Or find another surprise in case they have a counterspell for it. And then we just want them to tap out next turn. Alright, opponent did have the Make disappear, so glad we baited that out. But they could have another counterspell in hand. For now, Synthesizer. At least Surprise is an instant, so we can always cast it end of turn. But ideally, we can just go for the combo. But yeah, opponent has 2 cards in hand. Played another Synthesizer, which I could destroy with Brotherhood's End, although that would also blow up my own Iron Crag. So instead, I think I just cast Terror of the Peaks, which they can still counter with Make Disappear. Doesn't seem like they have it. They could have a bounce spell in hand, which is maybe a reason to wait until we can cast this to give our creatures hexproof and indestructible. Opponent making their first construct token as we draw another Brotherhood's End. So we face a similar decision to last turn. Could just go for the kill, or we could Brotherhood's End to slow the opponent down and see what they have. Yeah, let's just destroy artifacts, tapping the Iron Crag. Can do it again should they counter. They're gonna Voltage Surge to take out our dragon, that's fine. Okay, so the coast is clear. Opponent's got 1 card left. I think I just go for it now. Now if they have a Voltage Surge, they don't have an artifact to take out Terror in response. And our opponent explodes, so get to saddle and attack for a ton of damage. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand's pretty clunky without red mana to cast our sweepers, and without any ramp, this feels too slow. This I can try. And then the Armadillo basically just gains us a bit of life. Might be better than a Forest, unless we draw a 2-mana ramp spell that we would rather cast. And then I think I keep my other spells. Could also maybe get rid of 1 Surprise. And then Charm can either ramp or get one of our combo pieces. But we might also want to use Surprise to just mill 4. Which I think will be more useful. Since the Surprise can also just hit additional land drops if we cast it for 3 mana. Opponent black-red so far. So waiting until we have the extra mana to give our team hexproof and indestructible could also be worth it. Alright, for now we'll pass a turn, can do everything at instant speed. And yeah, I could ramp, or I can just Surprise and hope to hit some creatures or lands. Alright, perfect. Calamity and Forest. So now we could use Charm to get our dragon. Although I still need to get up to at least 6 mana. And there's Shieldreds. Okay. So I think for now we still want to ramp. And get a district so we can scry, or surveil rather. And keep a land on top. So we cannot take out Shieldreds. Coast is clear for Smuggler Surprise, go for Tyrant and Calamity, which might just be good enough here. We're gonna draw a bunch of cards, lose some life to Shieldred, but also gain life with Tyrant. And then we should be in a good spot to take over from there. And if we wait, our opponent could have instant speed removal next turn to mess things up. There's Terror of the Peaks, so if Calamity survives, we can still maybe combo next turn. Although I guess Calamity also runs into Shieldred here. Is that worth it? I think so. We'll draw quite a few cards with the Tyrant. Hadn't considered 4/6 needing to attack into Shieldred, but that's the cost of doing business. Ideally we just find another Surprise to put Calamity and Terror in play. And our opponent's also taking 12 damage here. Okay, so as the dust settles, we have a Voltborn Tyrant on the battlefield and a full hand where we even need to discard to hand size. So 2 lands can go, that's maybe it. Possible we want a Brothers and some smaller creatures, or combine it with Elder Dragon War. And then if this Tyrant dies, it will leave behind an artifact version of itself. We're still at 28. Opponent likely keeping up some removal here. Okay, so casting another Calamity, maybe not the best idea. Instead, I could attack, see if they just want to chump with Shieldreds and trade basically. If I try and fight with Archrid's Charm, that's not going to end well for me. And casting Elder Dragon War plus Brotherhood's End also feels pretty weak. So I think we start just by attacking and see what's up. Now if our opponent goes first with their removal, we can maybe respond with an Archdruid's Charm. Yeah, since we have a second one, that might be alright. Alright, so Shieldred down. Don't get to attack here. But we still draw. And then I could Elder Dragon War, just make a dragon token to keep up the pressure. Alternatively, we could have just used the second mode to discard any number of cards and maybe dig towards another Smuggler Surprise, but we only have 2 left in the deck, so we're not all that likely to hit it. Opponent now with Rakdos joins up. They apparently discarded Italy with the Bitter Triumph. So that's a pretty neat combo. Hits Glimpse the Core and Charming Scoundrel. So our opponent was more of a Reanimator deck. Alright, so opponent is now tapped out. So we should be able to figure out a win from here. Can play Calamity, Saddle. Either one of these will do. Okay. I guess it's more fun to draw cards on the way out here. And then Boseiju could also be channeled to blow up Rakdos joins up. But probably no need for it here. Alright, and our opponent explodes. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, and I think we've got a keeper. Armadillo gets a 3rd land. And then we've got interaction if we need it. If not, we can discard to the Elder Dragon War and dig towards Calamity. Opponent black-white. Keep a forest. Possible we'll need to get up to 7 mana total to also give Hexproof and Indestructible if our opponent keeps up instant speed removal. The bat will kind of see what's up here. Taking Armadillo would throw off our curve the most since it's our only 2 mana play, but it's not particularly impactful right now. So they might take Brotherhood's End as an early sweeper. We'll see. So possible our opponent's a black-white life gain deck if they're running Scoured Barrens. So we can expect Voice of the Blessed, Amalia. Those are creatures that can grow out of range from our removal. So that could be somewhat problematic. And if they gain enough life, they may survive or combo with Terror of the Peaks, at least for a turn. Opponent ends up taking the sweeper, so plan is to use Armadillo, get, doesn't matter too much, maybe a mountain in case we run out of forests in the deck for Glimpse. And yeah, if they have an Amalia or Voice of the Blessed, it will immediately pick up a counter. It's going to be a veteran first. And a Poisoner, okay. So maybe no 3rd land. The life gain deck doesn't need a ton of lands to operate since it's mostly 2-drops. But this might slow them down. Okay, so we can also use Smuggler Surprise to just mill a few cards and ideally hit Calamity. Next turn we can Elder Dragon War, so it's their last chance to grow their creatures. Alright, there's a Voice, so that will grow up to a 4/4. So it will survive Elder Dragon War. But this will still buy us some time. And then I don't mind using a surprise here. And we did hit Calamity, plus a land. So yeah, we just need to survive until we get to 6 mana, perhaps. And then we should be in the clear. This Voice of the Blessed has a long way to go. We're still at 20. And if they play another bat, we still have a Brotherhood's End to interact. Alright, Specialist getting back the bat is even better, since now they added a second life linker to the board. They're kind of forced to take Brotherhood's End. And then next turn, I don't have a whole lot going on, unless we find something with Elder Dragon War. Okay, so I can discard at least 2 lands. So Mountain Forest, and then keep lands 5 and 6. And Archdruid's Charm doesn't do a whole lot for me here, but we'll play the District. And then I guess with Charm we can maybe ramp to let us cast Surprise with Hexproof and Indestructible. Opponent's going to be gaining at least 3 life, up to 25. Should still be within range. In the case we could also destroy with Boseiju or Charm. So is that worth it? I guess your opponent tapped out now, so we're not too worried about removal. So I guess we'll deal with the case. And then next turn we'll go for the Surprise. Opponent up to 25, they have 1 flying blocker. Take out the Phantom. And attack. So 15 plus 14 should be lethal. Alright, sweet. We get to rank up here as well. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand is promising. We're just missing Calamity to set up our combo. Got some good ramp. And another Glimpse might be overkill. Would rather dig for Calamity, another Surprise, Archdruid's Charm. Those are all useful. And then next turn we can at the very least use Armadillo to get another mountain. As our opponent plays a turn 2 Harvester. Alright, now I can just start from chapter 1 instead. Deal with a Harvester, and then next turn discard and draw to look for Calamity. Opponent's got another Harvester. And draw into the fire. Yeah, I think we're okay to get rid of that. Question is whether I want to tap out for Terror of the Peaks and expose it to removal next turn. I probably don't. So in that case I might be better off keeping into the fire as another discard draw in case I don't draw anything useful here. Could also keep the Armadillo just to gain some life, but it doesn't seem super relevant. Alright, found the Tyrant. Into the fire, just discarding itself. And then hope to hit a land, so next turn I can Surprise putting in Tyrant and Terror, which isn't game winning, but is still pretty strong. And do this first in case I draw tap land, like Copperline Gorge or another District. Alright, there we go. So yeah, next turn we can Surprise for 6 mana. Hope our opponent's tapped out. And then if we top deck Calamity, we can just win on the spot. If not, Terror plus Tyrant still draws us a few cards and deals quite a bit of damage. Alright, opponent's gonna keep up mana. In that case, we can take it slow. Just cast Glimpse, and then next turn go for Surprise with Hexproof, or maybe mill additional cards to find Calamity. And then they might take out my Dragon token end of turn, which is fine. They don't. Alright, Gisa, they can immediately commit a crime with a Harvester to make some zombies. But now they're tapped out, which is where we want them to be. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to surprise to mill 4 cards. Now I guess I could wait, and Archer's Charm gets Calamity, and then next turn potentially win. If our opponent has a discard effect, we might regret it. Although I can always surprise at instant speed, putting in Tyrant and Terror. Gisa has Ward, so wouldn't be able to take that out, but we can always go face. Yeah, I guess we'll pass. See what our opponent does and act accordingly. Maybe they just tap out for more creatures. We can go for the kill. But yeah, Gisa, quite powerful if you can immediately commit a crime with a card like Harvester. There's Tiny Bones or the enchantment from Tiny Bones that can also trigger off legendary creatures. That's another great way to enable Gisa. Our opponent tapping out for Carnosaur, okay. So we'll see what that discovers. Go for the throat, that's gonna go to hand. Alright, so our opponent's nicely tapped out, they can hit for 10. They're gonna play it safe, playing around a Smuggler Surprise, perhaps. But now with Archer's Charm, we can tutor up Calamity, and that should be game. And just because, we'll give Hexproof and Indestructible as well. Calamity plus Terror, even though Voltborn Tyrant would have been pretty fun here to draw. So this can go face. Attack. And these can also go face. So just lethal from Terror of the Peaks triggers alone. And that'll do it. Alright, so got to see our red-green Smuggler Surprise deck in action. And I gotta say, I'm quite impressed. Now, of course, the deck might have some weaknesses. If you're facing decks with a ton of counter spells, they can just counter your surprise, and then you're left with some pretty expensive creatures that aren't too hard for the opponent to remove. If you're up against a very aggressive deck, like Mono-Red Aggro or Red-White Convoke, and you don't draw your sweeper in a timely fashion, you can also get run over before you can cast the Smuggler Surprise. But overall, I've been quite impressed, and I think this deck stands a chance in the current standard meta, and should also translate reasonably well to best of 3, where you can always add in more cheap interaction where it's needed, and you can swap out some of your top-end cards, maybe experiment with more copies of Voltborn Tyrant, because that card also certainly impressed. So yeah, that's gonna do it for today's gameplay. I wanna thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.